Hello again, everybody, and welcome back. Today's topic is going to be a continuation of our discussion of Afghanistan and the effects that the Cold War is going to have on Afghanistan and also the rise of the Taliban. So, yesterday, we were talking about how um, you had the Soviet invasion and the US stepped in and secretly was helping this group known as the Mujahideen. And that it was dangerous. It was, potentially very, very complicated because if you had any sort of, civil war, come up in the future, by supporting the Mujahideen now, you were kind of picking sides. You really want to try to stay away from that because ultimately you're saying that if you're picking the Mujahideen to support now, it's sort of like, oh well, when the civil war comes up, they're the ones that we say should be in charge, and we want to try to avoid all of that. So, to understand that a little bit better, I think it makes a little bit of sense to go ahead and take a little bit of a closer look at how the United States did all of this and what was the fallout from that. Yesterday, you had the assignment of trying to predict what problems might come about because of it. So let's take a look into what actually happened. First off, you got to know the important figures, the important people here. The person on the left, this guy right over here, is a gentleman by the name of Charlie Wilson. Charlie Wilson was a congressman from Texas at the time. He was in charge of the Appropriations Committee. Essentially, the Appropriation Committee gets to decide how much money is going to be given to different programs. Now, the thing about the Appropriations Committee is that the amounts of money and where that money is going is kept secret. Now, it's kept secret to protect what it is that's going on, what it is that money is being used for. So Charlie Wilson is going to be the guy who ultimately is going to approve or get people to approve an awful lot of the money that's going to be spent on the American side of the Soviet war in Afghanistan. The gentleman on the right, okay, this is Gust Avrakatos, I believe is how you say his name. He worked for the CIA. He was the task force chief for Afghanistan. So he was kind of like the guy who essentially is leading the arming of the Mujahideen. He's the one that comes in and says, "Hey, if you want to make a difference here, if you want to really do something here, arming the Mujahideen is how you do it." He was the one that's going to give Charlie Wilson information and say, "This is what they ultimately need on the ground to help with this." So there was a movie that was made a while back called Charlie Wilson's War, and it was all about this war in Afghanistan. So we're going to watch a couple of clips of that. I'm going to edit a couple of them, but we'll talk about them as we go a little bit. Now this first clip um, shows Charlie and a few other people visiting the Afghan Pakistani border where a lot of refugees have assembled. So we're going to watch this clip and then we'll talk about some of the issues that come about with because
350 people in 3 small villages in Kandahar. But instead of doing it all at once, the Russians would make the parents watch as they slit the throats of their children.
So the Russians gathered all the defectors and piled them like wood in the center of the village. Then they ran over them with their tanks.
I saw something shiny on the ground. I thought it was a toy. When I reached down to grab it, it exploded in my hand. I should have known, because last year my little brother tried to pick up a piece of candy. It split him in half.
It takes more work to take care of a wounded child than a dead one. So when the Russians cover fields with toy mines, adults who might help with the war effort have to take care of the children.
You can see yourself like a bug.
You're beautiful. How many children do you have?
She had 6.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Okay, here's a problem. You're looking at refugees. You're looking at people who have had everything taken from them and have nothing. They have no homes. Their families have been shattered. Parents have been killed in the war effort. You've got a situation where a lot of the parents who have died, that's children's first teachers. So what's happening is the Soviets are doing everything that they can to, certainly get rid of the adult population that can fight against them, but they're also trying to prey on, the children because they want to make sure that, children are impressionable. Children can be, talked into things, especially when their first educators, their first teachers, are going to wind up being people other than their parents. The educated people that could really have an impact here, they're all leaving through Pakistan. They're all getting out, and essentially is leaving this behind. So you can see this isn't a small problem. This isn't just a handful of people that is having this, impact their lives. This is entire, cultures. This is entire ethnic groups. This is a huge amount of the population living in Afghanistan at the time. All right. So now that he's seen this, okay, now what do you do? Well, now you go back to Washington, D.C., and now you try to get more money because you've seen what the problem is. And what he's ultimately going to try to do is increase the budget. He's convinced people this is a problem, this is something we need to do. So he's convinced people to increase the budget to $1 billion. So what are you going to do with that $1 billion? You're going to provide them with more modern weapons.
The Milan anti-tank missile. We've got 300 in the field. Yeah. Yep. Let's kill some Russians.
Voting to pump up the money for the freedom fighters is the only way for the Northeastern liberal to prove that he's serious.
How much are you asking for?
I'd want to go from 70 million to 100 million. If you vote for me, I can deliver the Black Caucus for the farm subsidy.
Больше нема, больше.
Заряжай оружие. Боевая готовность. Прием. Я включил. Прием. Прием. Открыть огонь.
So to this point, it's been the Soviets fighting a group of people who really don't have much of anything at all. They've been fighting, people who have sticks and rocks with helicopters and tanks. Now the Americans through the Pakistanis are providing those people known as the Mujahideen with more modern weapons, and this is the impact of that.
И вообще, что такое серьезное отношение? Что надо под этим понимать, а? Это на что, о верности, что ли? Ха! Ай, ну если ее понятие верности...
So now they're able to fight back a little bit. Here's the problem that's going to come with that. Now you've provided the Mujahideen with modern weapons so they can fight against the Soviets. Cool. However, if you do that, now those people have these modern weapons that other groups aren't going to have, which means after the Soviets leave, okay, well, what do you do with those weapons? What we don't do is we don't take those weapons back. We don't get it out of their hands. So ultimately, the Mujahideen are going to be able to take those weapons in turn and use them during this civil war that's going to erupt once the Soviets leave. So the Mujahideen have been armed by the Americans, and now it looks like that the Americans are in favor of the Mujahideen ultimately taking over and taking power here.